Hey, world of YouTube, Spotify, wherever you're listening to this. My name is Gregory Nelson, and welcome to What Did I Just Watch? My first guest is Rachel Corning, one of my best friends. We both worked in professional technical theater together, so we do know a little bit about, story building and drama and stuff like that. I am a huge wrestling fan. I have been since I was, 12 years old. Rachel is not. So we're hoping to get some of the best reactions out of people from this little thing we're doing to pass the time. And, hopefully this will bring some smiles on to the faces of people dealing with some trying times right now because the world is not super great lately. So Rachel, in your childhood or life or anything, were you exposed to pro wrestling or anything like that? Do you have any memories per se?
So I was aware of wrestling, but I didn't have any family members or siblings who watched it or like were in the worlds. So I feel like the most in-depth knowledge I ever had of pro wrestling is like when I met you 4 years ago. So I'm still not in the world, but you were like probably my introduction to like a wrestling fan.
Oh,
Because just
totally.
I just never had any friends growing up who were into it, so I was pretty much just oblivious to the worlds. I still am, but maybe a little bit less so for having known you for 4 years now.
Well, it was the complete opposite for me. In middle school, I was seated at a lunch table where all we talked about was wrestling every single lunch period. So that was pretty much my exposure. And then it just kind of stuck with me. Um, so again, throughout this series, what I'm hoping to do is like our first season will be the real intense stuff, the real stuff that really pushes people away from watching this. And then I think as we progress, I'll show you the stuff that I really consider like the art and like the craft of what they're actually trying to do. Um, so what we're gonna start with today is the Undertaker and Mankind Hell in a Cell match from King of the Ring 1998. This is actually known for being one of the most one of the most famous for um, insanity, I'd say. So Rachel has not seen this match yet. I've given her access to my WWE network. If you're watching at home and we're friends in real life, um, contact me. I'll give you my network info so you can watch this match. We're going to stop for 20 minutes, watch the match, and we're going to come back and what's the best word for that? Reconvene.
Yeah.
So anyone watching, now's a good time to pause, watch the match, contact me if you want to, watch the match in good quality. And we'll be back to you in a little bit about what Rachel just saw. So see you in a bit.
See ya.
And we are back. Rachel.
Greg, what did I just watch?
So this is my life.
how
um,
how many times have you seen that match?
I've seen that match like 30 times since it existed. Like when John and I first moved into the apartment together, he's like, let's watch Undertaker Mankind in the Hell in a Cell. Like that match is pretty notorious for like the wrestling injury match.
Okay. So it's kind of like is that like peak injury? Does it get worse than that? Do
I've,
I
ne-
want to know?
I've never really seen it go further than that.
Okay.
That's why I chose that for the first episode of this podcast. There's some similar, but as far as violence, like Mankind, aka Mick Foley, uh, he goes the limit in every single match he's in.
Yeah.
And it's just ridiculous. It is complete insanity every time he gets in the ring.
No, I was wondering, I have to wonder, do you think that any of these I mean, the pain that they feel is real, even though, you know, you can script this whole show, but if they're going to do these stunts in real life, I kind of wonder, do you consider these professional wrestlers a little bit masochistic? You know, they go into this and they feel pain for their job.
Mick Foley has this different sense about him. Like his personality is, he's an absolute sweetheart. I've met him in person and like he was like absolutely adorable to talk to. And like as his character, like he goes around saying have a nice day to people. To answer your question about masochism, I wouldn't be surprised if there were some wrestlers that were into that, but I don't think Mick Foley's into that. But like he's different because he does all this ridiculous stuff for his fans and not really for himself, because he's a guy who's done this type of stuff but never was really seen as a main event guy, like top of the company, like, you know, The Rock.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to throw a few images up in our chat.
Okay.
All right, so the first part of the match, first 2 minutes, like the match technically hasn't even started yet. The bell never rang for the beginning of this match. So normally there's a bell at the beginning, a bell at the end, and like this match apparently wasn't even originally planned to start on top. Mankind went up to Taker backstage and was just like, let's start it on top. And I don't think they ever planned to it leading to what it led to.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering because at one point when they were on top and like the cage started breaking under their weight, I was like, is this part planned for? Because, you know, that's like a little bit too specific.
I am going to bring up something else about that, but like the ability for him to just be like, hey, throw me off this, like, and for them to perfectly hit that table, like he could have landed on square cement. Instead he hits the table perfectly.
Yeah.
And like no one's ever tried to stage anything like that like since. They there's been other matches where they've made it like halfway up and people have fallen off through a table. Yeah, whatever. But like getting thrown off through a table and you're just lying there is just ridiculous. So what happens after this is I find this interesting for like the technicians inside of us, because they had to raise the cage in order to get him out of there on the stretcher. And Taker is still on top of the cage as it's raising up. So there's shots of Taker just above the lighting grid, just chilling out, waiting to come back down. At that point, they figured, all right, we're wheeling this guy out of here and calling this. And then the match is the cage is back on the ground, and out of nowhere, Mankind emerges from his stretcher and starts climbing it again. So, so what did you think of this?
Well, I always not that I see much wrestling, but when I do, I always laugh a little bit at the theatrics and like the heightened drama of everything. You know, the commentators definitely feed into that, you know.
Oh my goodness. Commentating nowadays, they overplay everything and it's just makes some of the product unwatchable sometimes.
It's the phrase is like, he's dead, like he's broken in half. I'm like,
broken in half.
So that was funny to me. Sometimes there was one point where I like opened another tab to reference something that I had looked up before and I wanted to refresh my memory. And I was glad that I didn't have the screen open because the commentary was something quite gruesome had happened. And I had happened to have missed it by having another tab open at that moment. So I can't say that I'm sad that I missed that part.
Do you know which part of the match that was?
It was before the thumbtacks. It was
It was
something
probably
when
It was probably.
Mankind starts bleeding from his mouth or something.
Oh my goodness, yes. Let me get that image up. His tooth is in his fucking nose.
Gross.
Second of all, he is not smiling in this picture. He is sticking his tongue into a hole in his mouth to prevent it from bleeding. It just looks like he's smiling, and it adds to his character so much. Did you see Undertaker chokeslam him through the roof of the cell?
Yes, I did.
Okay, that's that image here. So if you look at it up close, you can see that there's 4 zip ties around him that were holding up that specific part of the cage for him to get chokeslammed through.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's just one of the interesting things I always pick up on, like, oh no, he went right through that cage that was zip tied that would easily break if somebody went through them.
So you were saying how they kind of planned to start the match on top of the cage, backstage just beforehand, but
Yeah.
it seemed like, being on top of the cage was kind of in the plan.
I think they had a plan to make their way up there eventually, but I'm pretty sure that wasn't the original plan.
Okay.
Still, I could be wrong.
All right.
And then there's like another just like hilarious part that I totally forget about in this match is that Mankind's good friend Terry Funk comes out to the ring to help him out, and the Undertaker choke slams him out of his shoes. And like, I watched this match yesterday before rewatching it today, and I totally missed that segment. I looked away for a second, and I'm just like, why is there a pair of fucking shoes in the ring? And then I was totally reminded of it today that Undertaker just like destroys a man out of his own shoes. It's like I think for like a match of this caliber, it's just like such a cheesy thing to add on that this dude's shoes fell off.
Like, how did they do that? Like, did that just happen? Like, is that
I think if you watch the clip back, he kind of just kicks them off as it happens, but like I don't know what they were thinking with that. Like, there's so many other things going on, but then there's this dude's shoes just chilling in the ring next to a pile of thumbtacks.
It's comic relief, you gotta break it up a little bit.
So I think the next part of this match wound up being like Mankind getting somewhat of a little bit of offense in the match after being destroyed for 15 minutes. He wound up going to Taker with a chair a few times, but like Taker just sits up right after it and just continues to just destroy him. There's a spot in this match later where like the two are fighting and Mankind winds up on Undertaker's back, and then Taker just slowly steps back towards those thumbtacks and just lets it all go. So the funny thing about this is that Mick Foley was like unimpressed with how that shot would have looked, which is why he tells the referee after that match to tell Taker to choke slam him onto the thumbtacks again, because the first shot wasn't as good. He didn't hit like the dead center of those thumbtacks, which is why he's rolling in it after the first spot. But like, he straight up says, do it again and do it right. And he does. And then right after that, Taker just immediately picks him up and gives him a tombstone pile driver and finishes the match almost as a let's get this over with and get this guy to a hospital type thing.
A little mercy is shown.
Oh my goodness. No Mercy is actually the best WWF video game ever released, even compared to today's video game standards. And you can fight me on that in the comments.
Yeah, do it. Fight him.
I know things about wrestling.
Yeah, he did.
So do you have any final thoughts on what I have shown you today?
I took a lot of notes. It's just, it's probably because like I don't really know much about wrestling in general.
Sure.
But specific to this match, Like, how, I mean, you can rehearse, right? They rehearse matches to a certain extent.
Like today they rehearse it much more heavily, but like you can't rehearse like getting thrown off a cell like that.
Right, you can't rehearse an injury. So
A
I
lot of
guess,
stuff like that I think is just in the moment, like, hey, I'm feeling this crowd, throw me off this fucking thing.
okay. So I guess I know like in theater, everything has to be precisely the same
Yeah.
every single performance, for the safety of the performers and the technicians and to make sure that cues are hit. But in
I think we both
wrestling,
agree that the safety of the technicians isn't on everybody's radar all the time.
no, but it should be,
It should be.
hypothetically. But in wrestling, you can't rehearse every single injury that's going to happen, or like these two backstage changed the plans right before the match. And
Yeah.
I feel like as these shows are happening, the producers and technicians just have to be on their toes like all the time, right?
Well, 100% after this pay-per-view aired, like stuff, like people were definitely more on their toes, but like more matches happened with Thumbtack since then. I'm pretty sure a Thumbtack match has even happened in the past year.
that's that's wild to me.
Another reason people would have done that spot in the past is because they're a superstar who's on like the mid card and wants to get pushed into the main event, and showing that dedication can really, push you to the top. Oh,
Yeah,
you'll land on Thumbtacks for this company? Yeah, we'll make you a world champion.
like how far will you go?
Yeah. Sadly, like Mankind was never really like he was pushed into the main event pictures. He's been in the main event of WWE for like a year or two, but then I feel like overall he was never taken seriously because he doesn't fit that model of like Vince McMahon's WWE champion. He's not chiseled like The Rock or anything like that. Um,
Hmm.
like I'll keep comparing him to The Rock too, because they were literally polar opposites around this time of wrestling, to the point where they've made like a strange bedfellow type of tag team
Hmm.
called the Rock and Sock Connection. And those two, like a guy like The Rock, who's just like full of electricity in every single thing he says, put together with a guy like Mankind, who has put his body on the line time and time again. The two were like a non-stop comedy duo at that time. Like they fed off each other incredibly well.
Interesting.
Yeah. So weirdly enough, like Mankind has always been able to like make his opponent a star by putting his body on the line.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
And
okay.
it's sometimes it's really about, you have to do your job sometimes and make the other guy look good. Like,
So,
yeah.
do you think people, not people, do you think wrestlers kind of hoped to be matched with him so that it would make them look better?
I think so. I think anyone who's not really on the radar of being a top guy at least does a job of putting other people into the spotlight.
All right. I mean, that's kind of an
Oh,
admirable position to take as a stepping stone for other people in your profession, I guess.
yeah, he definitely knows how to like really bring a crowd to their feet also, and he's definitely a guy who's learned like that's the way I have to do this if I'm going to be allowed to, represent this company.
Yeah. That was
And,
kind of his in for
oh yeah.
not being a typical looking wrestler at the time.
Oh yeah, and that's why he was brought in. He was notorious for doing like barbed wire, like ridiculous barbed wire matches on like out in Japan and China, or in ECW, which was Extreme Championship Wrestling. He would do like a flaming table or something like that. You know, like
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure like just like he continues to just like Yeah. um, do you have any other thoughts for us today?
Let's see. Hmm. Oh, I had a question.
Sure.
The extreme nature of this match kind of made me think of it. To your knowledge, has anyone ever been killed, literally killed in the ring? I know that somebody died. Alberto Torres died following a match in 71 of a
Hmm.
ruptured appendix. And I know they worked that into his storyline.
You did your research for this.
Yeah.
I
Um,
don't even know who that is.
okay, well, anyway, Ox Baker, Alberto Torres, Baker was the heel, and he became one of the most hated heels of the time because they worked into his storyline that he had like punched Torres in the heart because Torres actually died of a ruptured appendix following the match. But I was wondering, has anyone actually been killed in a match?
Yeah, I think a few years ago, Rey Mysterio was in a match with someone, and it wasn't necessarily his fault, but like the guy wound up getting hung up, like just the way he landed wound up like smacking his neck or something, and then Ray did his finisher after that. And I don't have the full details on that match, but I'm gonna send you a Wikipedia link on that later today.
Wow. Rest in
Um,
peace. That's
but yeah, never like I think this match we just watched is definitely one of the matches someone's really been, close to actually dying in, but somehow mankind has a ridiculous threshold of pain.
yeah, clearly.
Um, I think that's going to wrap it up for us. I hope this goes well. I had a lot of fun talking to you. I also haven't seen you in, months. So
Yeah.
my goal throughout this is to, keep bringing people's attention to why I consider this to be like my go-to style of performative art. Um, and sadly, because we're not getting musical theater or anything close to that at the moment, I'm pretty grateful that wrestling's still going on, but at the same time, their safety measures could be taken better.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I mean, the last thing I want to do, like the last thing I want is for anyone to get, sick and die, regardless of who they are. But like, um, yeah. Finally, I just want to say I don't really want to be doing this podcast forever. I'd love to get back to work. So anyone out there who's listening, stay safe, stay home, wear a mask, don't be a dick, and, support each other.
Don't go to a party.
Yeah. Don't go to a party. um, I just want to thank my guest, Rachel Corning, again. I hope if we do a second season of this, I'll have our next level of style of wrestling match. You've gotten out of the you're out of the woods with like the real gory stuff. So I'm not going to subject you to that again. So
No
it'll be,
more.
I think next month we might wind up doing like the goofy stuff, like maybe just like goofy offstage segments and stuff like that.
That'd be
So
fun.
yeah, a little smile on people's faces. And a lot of that stuff is normally terrible too. So like you'll get a good laugh out of it. Um, Thanks again for everyone who watched, and stay tuned because there's hopefully going to be a few more of these.
Yeah. Thanks, Greg, for having me on your first episode.
Hell yeah. Yeah, you guys take care. Bye, everyone.